Hello, everyone. Today is Friday, March 11th, 311. And just like 311, which is one of my favorite bands, we are going to come original today in everything that we do and everything that we truly are. Wherever you are at in the world, we know that we're a worldwide community. So wherever you're at, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of Fiscus. Thank you for being on this journey. We are knocking out these major milestones and thrilled today to have some just phenomenal news in store. Obviously, the big thing everyone is here is not only Princess with Project Developer Panel, but also information about the LBP, which we'll announce at the end of the AMA. And spoiler alert, yes, it is next week. Thrilled for that. So as we begin, I definitely just want to say from a standpoint of sentiment of what's been going on, just thank you so much to the community. Thank you for your amazing DMs. Thank you for your understanding. Thank you for diving into Fiscus Plus and understanding the implications of the four pillars of Fiscus and what truly we have the ability to do. I am very happy to say and humbled to say that it's time to continue in our deep dive with Princess and the off-chain as she introduces two project owners that bring together both timely and relevant environmental solutions that have significant strength and leadership and management and social impact that truly can only be found by being part of some of the largest U.S. tribes. And so with that, I would love to turn it over to Princess, and she will take it from there.
Fantastic. Fantastic Fiscus Friday. We have had another sensational week in the off-chain financing world. We've executed more high-level projects than we had the week before. And these projects will literally change the current statuses of places like my hometown here in Vegas and even as far away as the Caribbean islands. So more to come on future development as we take advantage of this platform to really share who these folks are that I get to interact with and who you ultimately are supporting in the contributions and participations that we see in our great community here. Also, our inaugural funding groups are so ready for this deployment of capital towards their projects. That's what's really made this week quite sensational, is just the excitement, the future visioning and planning, and of course the deep loyalty and appreciation of what we're able to do both in the on-chain and the off-chain environment. This has been a long time wait for many of these projects, not just the last several months that I've been working with them or years that I've been in touch with them, but really decades in the making. And, some of these folks have actually been quietly active in the Discord community as I've encouraged them to really open their minds and open their thought processes towards what the future could hold for financing. I just want to thank the community for answering their questions and being just plain great people to engage with as they step forward and begin to interact with each of you. As I've also mentioned, I'll be using this time on this platform to bring forward these leaders for projects for you to hear straight from them. What's their vision? What's the plan? And what's the data that separates their projects from the rest? Why is it that they're selected? So today I have the honor to present two guests. We have Mr. Tony Hale of Beauty Way Energy and Mr. Greg Jackson of R3 Renew. I'll give a brief introduction and then ask a few questions of each for our conversation with how Wawea has supported these projects to participate in the off-chain development world, as well as now introducing them to the Fiscus Funds on-chain community and how the funding aligns with who they're trying to impact and what communities they're serving in their efforts to bring forward some of the newest and best technologies and the most relevant technologies for our times. So I'd like to start with Mr. Tony Hale of Beauty Way Energy. He is, the introductions that I'll be doing were really written on behalf of each of the members here. So Mr. Hale's clans are Water's Edge. That's his paternal clan in the Salt community. Maternal grandfather's clan is the Towering House, and the paternal grandfather's clan is Bitter Water. Mr. Hale has been a business consultant for over 18 years and brings great knowledge in the construction of business relations and execution. Mr. Hale has also spent years paving the pathway for Native American-owned companies to become successful on and off the Great Navajo Nation. Mr. Hale also works with non-Native companies to become trusted vendors to the Navajo Nation and other Indian nations across the globe. Currently, Mr. Hale is the owner of 6 businesses involved in the construction, the IT, business consulting, oil and gas investments, commodities, and even print and mail industries. Mr. Hale also has 2 nonprofit companies that benefit the Native America. So that's my introduction, but I would really love for you to hear straight from Tony his introduction of himself before I begin to ask him a couple questions about what brings him to the Fiscus funds and how the Fiscus funds are supporting his development. Tony, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Princess, for that introduction. Now let's hear it in Navajo.
Yes.
She Tony Hale and she to behind shlong do shin bashes chin ki ani dashiche do toda chitni dashinala. Akode kojon do le wa yin atwa. And of course, I introduced myself as Tony Hale. Like Princess said, she told you that my clans are Water Edge. I am born for the Salt clan. But I also asked the holy ones that they bless our conversation today. As Princess has said, I'm a business person. I've been involved with business on the Navajo Nation for a long time. My father was an attorney. So I used to help him as a general counsel for different entities within the Navajo Nation. But my passion has always been small business and how we can build the private sector within the Navajo Nation, and I think that's why I opted to become a board member of the Dene, which means the people in Navajo, Dene Chamber of Commerce. And with that organization, we push to build private businesses so they can prosper on and off the Navajo Nation. And with that, I have several companies, like Princess had mentioned. We have Beautyway Energy, which is an oil and gas company, more in the investment and exploration. And then also Sharper Steel Data, which we engage Indian nations to build hyperscale data centers, or it doesn't have to be hyperscale, but that's what we'd like to see in order to bring revenue to Indian nations from the outside. So those are the 2 major components of the projects that we have going today. And I am also engaged with a company called Yalty Telecom, in which we do telecommunications, fiber install, and actually thinking about getting into and planning on getting into the blockchain arena. So that's a brief introduction of myself. Thank you. Thank you again, Princess. And let me say one thing, that Princess is a delight to work with. So I'm grateful that she represents the Fiscus community, and I'm grateful that I can call her a friend. Yeah, Princess.
Kuya, thank you so much. One thing that is really beautiful in the work that I get to engage in is the wonderful honor it is to truly connect with individuals from their positions of strength and power, leadership, beauty. And Tony always reminds me that the Navajo really greet their day from a place of seeing beauty first. And so that has always just carried with me as I go into this work. You don't typically think of beauty when you're looking at spreadsheets, but man, when those numbers add up, you definitely look at beauty at a different lens. Through our similarities, through our indigenous lineage and our protocols and practices, we've been able to cross-share and cross-exchange some of the language, culture, and practices that we get to engage in that gets us through the day-to-day efforts that we bring to both our communities as well as our working world. Tony, thank you so much. It really just an honor to hear more about your projects. I mean, it's so rare that we don't even really hear of these projects in the national news front. And so to hear firsthand from you the development of your project, Beauty Way Energy, which we have committed to through our MOU that we were going to be supporting the first installment and staging of the financing. I was wondering if you could just give a brief breakdown of what Beauty Way Energy is seeking to do in the world of oil and gas, this world that is now so relevant, so much on everybody's minds and hearts, and it comes out of every financer's mouth these days. So I wonder if you could just do a brief dive into what is Beauty Ways Energy's goal with using the funds that Fiscus is bringing forward.
Okay, well, Beauty Way Energy, my partner and I, my partner's John Chung. He's also he's native Malaysian, Singapore, grew up there, but we had hooked up before because he had some relationships with oil and gas. And the more we talked, and him being a religious individual, he's actually on the advisory board for the Salvation Army. We said, what kind of good can we do? And what kind of good can we do within the Indian, what we call Indian country? And we said, well, we need money to do that kind of good. So the first thing we did is we started a nonprofit. We've got 2 of them now, in which we engage the Indian nations and provide them with scholarships, education, water research, and power research, and broadband research in order for them to prosper. But we also said, well, we need money to do that. So the quickest way, and working through John Chung's channel, is let's get into the oil and gas industry so we can make a chunk of change and use that change to do much better. And we've been working on this particular project that Fiscus is funding for about 3 years, in which it's a combination of oil wells that we're purchasing on the Louisiana Mississippi border, and we have already pinpointed 168 new wells to be drilled. So in a nutshell, we are using the oil and gas proceeds to better Indian America and the underserved people of not just the Navajo Nation, but all of Indian country.
Thank you so much, Tony. You know, one thing that has brought me to this awareness in the oil and gas space has actually been through my conversations with Mina Zaga. As you know, Dave Archambault, who was really one of the most prolific leaders in the Standing Rock protests with regard to the diversion of the Keystone pipeline and the Dakota pipeline. You know, many people walk away from hearing those stories and have this understanding that perhaps the Native community is not interested in the fossil fuel technologies. But the truth of the matter has been that we're all dependent still on fossil fuels. And so, you know, with the United States making this great shift, both in the global context, but then also in the domestic context, this is really what's really happened is that we've now making more space for different groups to get involved. Those groups that know the lands, know the impact, know the effort that's really required from a place that's not only smart and intelligent, but also a place of great reverence to the environmental impact. And so I'm curious, Tony, how is it that you'll be implementing the funding that you're receiving from Fiscus for the Beauty Way Energy project? Like what could we might see sort of on a use of proceeds sheet that, you know, we financiers really like to understand in terms of just what's the goal here at this stage?
I think the goal that John and I had talked about in providing or using the proceeds from the oil and gas industry is to mostly to provide education. The young people of Indian country don't have the opportunity to go to college. So we were talking actually about building a college that represents the upcoming future, like crypto, like blockchain, like programming, things like that, and more of a STEM-based college, a technical school, if you will, all over Indian country. And that, I think, is our main focus with the proceeds is how do we start that? Who do we engage with? And actually educate the youth to become people of that will sit at the table when it comes to the board meetings and these big corporations. That's what we want to see.
Well, that makes good sense to me, especially knowing that statistically, 42% of all U.S. tribal populations have youth that are under the age of 24. I mean, when you have
Exactly.
that kind of impact, we know that to change a community, you got to start with the children. You got to start with the youth. You got to get it into their minds and hearts that they have a space at the table as they're learning and growing and developing. And
Right.
I was. Mhm.
And as just one comment, as a Navajo, as a Native American, we always try and think of 7 generations ahead. How can we prepare this earth? How can we prepare this this environment to better suit the 7th generation behind us? That's the way we think.
That's one place that you and I see the world in a similar vision, because my own lineage has that view, and I'm even challenging myself to think even 9 generations, 10 generations, as far as my vision can see. And then I could tell through the planning and our conversations, Tony, that you have that similar approach. Not only do we look behind us to know what we can gather for strength and knowledge, but what we can bring to the future. And I think that the developments that you're talking about, it's changing the model. It's changing the way that we see how an effort that's both based in staying competitive in the global environment, but also staying cooperative in the knowledge sharing that we do is something that has been a challenge across all Indigenous groups. And I'm wondering, how do you resolve the tensions of sharing knowledge and at the same time staying competitive?
Then we jump into the education field. I think it's an understanding and having that open mind, and because you're dealing in 2 worlds. What my father used to tell me is that you're always going to walk in 2 worlds. You're going to have the Navajo side, and you're going to have the outside world that you have to deal with. But you have to understand both, because the knowledge that you have as a Navajo person and being traditional is what's going to ground you. The knowledge that you gain from the outside and is going to make you give you the education to proceed in life. But when you combine them, then you'll be able to make the world a better place. So that's basically how I walk that line every day with all of my businesses, with all of my relations. It's just a way of life and a culture for me.
See, when things are rooted in culture like that, it really, really deepens not only the engagement of the dollars, but it creates a level of intentionality to make sure that those dollars circulate to the most impactful places. So I'm curious, what considerations did you have when we were getting introduced? Because I remember that I will never forget that day. It was a room full of a Zoom room full of other Indigenous leaders, yourself amongst I think there was maybe 15 or 16 of y'all sitting patiently waiting for my presence there. I'm just curious, what were some of the considerations going through your mind as I was introducing the funding opportunity and practice that we were engaging here with WAWEA and the Fiscus funds?
My whole view walking into that meeting or entering into that meeting was that where is the money coming from? Because I didn't really understand the whole concept behind it. I mean, but I just wanted to understand where was it coming from. But that meeting, I think it was uh, the other people that were there and attending, the other leaders, they had all great ideas of social kind of projects, but I think the projects that I presented are geared to both cash flow and making a difference. So when you combine the two, then it seems to work a little bit faster. So in that engagement, I really just wanted some more education and to actually meet you and to say hello, because it was just something that through Mini Zaga, they said you have to meet Princess. And talking with Lynn, I was intrigued the way you presented yourself, and intrigued of how you presented the Fiscus opportunities. So thank you for that.
Yes, and just to, I know there's been some murmur in our community about, wonder who's Minazaga, and wonder if we're going to get to hear from them. Minazaga Consulting is made of also, indigenous leadership that have been veterans in the field of finance for 20, 30 years. So I look to them as part of a type of informal kind of mentoring community of other financial experts who've seen the way that project financing has evolved, and how there's been some room for this type of social and environmental development, but at the same time, Bob Buchan being part of the Métis Nation, and then also Lynn Rapp being part of the Ogallala Sioux tribe. We really have all connected quite deeply on not this just being a necessity in terms of diversifying the portfolios out there, but also a necessity for our own communities to find a seat at the table, to get a desk at the same conversations that are being had for decision making around financing. And so, I'm very honored to have been invited into that space, and to be invited into further conversations to deepen not only the knowledge that's necessary in stepping into this kind of financing, but also the cross training, right? Lynn and Bob are a little bit older in terms of their generational views on the on-chain development and cycles that have been happening. Of course, privy to the public announcements when things go haywire or go volatile in those spaces. And so it's been an ongoing conversation of carried support across the generations, across the cultural dynamics, and certainly across just the basic answer to the question: what are these good solutions out there? What are the ways that we can be creative and competitive at the same time? So I'm glad that you were able to pick up on some of that, and that we, in our ongoing conversations, you asked me some great questions. And so I'm so glad that I get the opportunity to ask you some questions, and I guess I'll continue to ask this other question that's been on my mind, which is: how do the processes and the terms of the funds align with the community that you're hoping to impact? For example, when we talk about the all-chain experience, there's distinct differences between what we do off-chain and what we do on-chain. And I was wondering if you might be able to speak to how a decentralized community like the Fiscus DAO planning and processing and creating and structuring of our community, how that aligns with the Navajo's view of the future developments. I know that we had that brief conversation with some of the folks over at Yalty. I was wondering if you can kind of bring some insight to this community about what that alignment really looks like and feels like from your vantage point.
Okay, well, the process, I guess, was quite easy in my opinion, because like I said, with the oil and gas, we've been doing this for about 3 years, looking for funding, trying to figure out how we can and where we need to go to find the right people in the right place. But it was quite easy. To be honest, it was easy because of you, Princess, because you presented it in a way that we could understand, and you presented it in a way to where you kind of opened the community to me, actually, because I've been reading a bunch of stuff on inside the Discord community, and really kind of engaging and learning how the processes work. And I'm coming from a business minded person, I'm like, wow, this is really, really wonderful. It's amazing how your minds work there at the Fiscus Fund, and how you could put the on-chain and off-chain communities and have them work together. And it was just delighted to see how that process works. Now, the decentralized in the most important aspect of dealing with Indian nations, I'm not just talking about Navajo, and the decentralized system that's used, is that we don't have to give up our sovereignty. If you ever go to a bank or any kind of other lending institutions, they say you have to sign a waiver to give up your sovereignty. And that's always been the problem for years and years. I remember my father, when he was president of the Navajo Nation in the mid-90s, talking about, this is such a problem for us, because, they have all these projects that they need to move forward, but the banking system they were working with kept saying, well, you have to give up your sovereignty. And that's not the case with the decentralized system. So I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful platform, not just for indigenous nations, but for all communities worldwide, because a lot of them, have for years and years had to rely on the centralized systems, these central banks and all these rules that were made up not for the community, but for the people or the individuals in the banking systems to make a profit. So again, thank you, Fiscus.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. You guys are really helping to not only make this a successful journey across the token experience, but you're also allowing for us to come in with the levels of support. The one thing that I've learned is that this community is quite filled with expertise, knowledge, perspective, worldview, stances that really have opened my eyes even to the level of creativity that I get to bring to the world of global project financing. It really helps to it's really a difference than when I was kind of in different institutional groups that were part of the centralized banking process or procedures, or even just the central bank themselves. And to see the level of flexibility and the welcomeness for a diversity of experiences, so that we can really, truly follow that, age-old adage in the investing community that, hey, diversification is one thing, but you have to diversify across all planes and worldviews to really see the exposure of these new technologies, new ways of thinking, and new ways of promoting accessing resources, yes, but then the stewardship. And so I was wondering if you could speak to one more question before, I know that we're waiting for our next guest to come on. I know he's been having just a little challenge, so we're going to give him a few more minutes. But I'm wondering if, Tony, you could share with us how the world view of the native, particularly the Navajo, as they've been planning the infrastructural support to guide and help the next generation, right, to be able to participate in what we're now calling this digital revolution when it comes to the digital economy. Could you help us understand how the worldview is opening itself to these perspectives?
As when you look at Indian nations as a whole, especially in the United States and maybe across the globe, they're third world countries. I mean, they're places that not very many opportunities, they're not blessed with opportunities like the rest of the world is. So to be educated and have a grasp understanding and actually utilizing the knowledge of the digital economy is a new concept to them. A lot of them don't understand because if we're not off the reservation going to college and we're on the reservation helping to build a family structure, then that's more of a home, taking care of the home kind of background. You don't have that education or that access to the outside world, and that's where the digital economy lives. To give you a understanding that the Navajo Nation is large. It's about the size of the state of Vermont, and we have about just under 500 or 500,000 people um, that are citizens of the Navajo Nation, but about 35 to 40% still don't have running water, still don't have electricity. You know, the broadband, cell phone services is very, very bad. You know, and so the during the pandemic, we had, because everything was distant learning, we had children that had to leave their home and climb up the hill or a small mountain just so they could connect with their computers to go to school on top of this little hill. All over the nation, this was happening. And that's something that we need to change. And the digital economy is something that's far-fetched for them to even understand. But we need to grasp it. We need to engage it. We need to open our doors so we can allow that to come in, so we can better advance the people of the Navajo Nation and all Indian nations. And to the other project that we have engaged with the Fiscus Fund, we are actually trying to bring that into Indian nations through the railroad system and installing fiber optics throughout the United States, because of the buffalo trade back in the day. Buffalo Bill would hunt the buffaloes and load them onto these rail carts, and they would by train take those hides to places like Chicago or Houston, bigger cities like that, Denver. But a lot of those railroads run through those Indian reservation, Indian lands. So when we partner with the railroads and are actually allowed to install fiber, then we would be a major player, because we would provide the backbone in order to provide the broadband to those Indian nations that don't even have it. And that's the whole purpose of Yalty Telecom, or Yalty Global, is to provide that broadband service, communication services to Indian nations, to underserved and unserved areas of the United States. So that project is quite huge, and I'm happy that Fiscus was going to be a part of it.
I know. I'm so looking forward to that. I mean, when we're talking about taking a clean approach, in terms of, all right, we see this railroad that takes up, 32,000 miles of just land space in its length and exposure, and to be able to take advantage of some of those lands that just are around that kind of infrastructure, and then to be able to use it to expose even more opportunities for infrastructure. I mean, that to me is just like such a, it resonated with me with regard to how we indigenous think that no spot of land is really unknown. We really get to know exactly how we can make use of these different spaces in our environment, to think a little bit outside the box, to think under the earth, to think even over the earth in terms of the airspace as well. And in my hearing of the that whole project and its whole sweeping breadth of landscape of opportunity, and then how you all are thinking about that this is how we can leave a legacy for the youth to be able to not only access the infrastructure, but I just think of how privileged I am to be able to always have internet service, and to know that on some of these most remote places, even here in the United States, that to get cell phone services, it has not been a regular everyday exercise. And to allow for the technology, it really has, just opened my eyes that, you know what, as the older generations think about the legacy that they're leaving behind, I too think about that legacy that I'd like to leave behind, and how it will support the overall development of the youth being able to step in and take leadership. A little bit different than some of our past, 20th century thinking around, the industrial sort of minds of the past. And so it's really an important way to kind of reintroduce these technologies, but from a way that we can really see that infrastructure supporting not just those who are in the room and making the decisions at the time, but those who will soon fill the room with new ideas and exciting ideas. I mean, how can you work on the blockchain if you don't have some of those basic infrastructural supports? Really, really easy to look over it and kind of have it be an oversight until, well, like we all know, when we don't have internet, we know we have to find other means. So really loved that conversation that we had earlier this week. And that's something that I really pride myself in, is being available for these project owners and groups and managers and leaders to think differently, to have those conversations, expose those areas of opportunity, so that way I can really expose the full breadth of possibility for not only the funding, but then how others can get involved in supporting the overall growth and trajectory. So Tony, thank you so much for your time and energy today, and helping us to think about when we think about reservation lands. I think that sometimes that creates a separation in how we think about the United States, particularly, rather than an inclusive sort of approach of how we can really take a full look and scope of it. And it was in the conversations with the leaders that we had this week that I picked up on a phrase that I think is really quite telling, which is that that idea of a knowledge economy, the idea that we need to share some of this knowledge to be able to grow together and be able to coexist. We're not necessarily needing to battle each other, but we are needing to figure out these solutions and come together and wrestle down the actual solutions that will bring forward those opportunities for our communities. So, thank you for that, Tony. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know that you're also a busy guy out there in the world, and I do want to introduce the next project. And I know that Greg is still having a little trouble getting access to the space, but I do want to share with the room a statement that he shared with me that will help us to understand how R3 Renew relates to a project like Mr. Tony Hale's Beauty Way Energy. So I'm just going to read from his submission to me while we see if we can get him to come and join us. I know that he's in the Discord community and space, but he's not necessarily in our room today. So Greg Jackson of R3 Renew. R3 Renew is a hydrogen-based renewable energy company that believes water holds the key to solving many of the world's energy problems. Water can be found in almost every aspect of day-to-day life. The amount of wastewater we create is staggering. The answer to solve many waste issues is to go upstream and treat and repurpose the stream to emit less by modifying current technologies that address the waste emissions and water problems. We use these technologies as a resource to fund operations. The paradigm needs to shift, however, to provide actual validated and verified reductions that impact the emission stream. These allowances and credits allow corporations to continue to pollute at the same levels. We will participate in these programs as we will provide energy solutions that eliminate waste, provide energy, and produce renewable fuels to displace gasoline and diesel. How we process this acts as the key to unlocking the future to alternative net zero fuel. Many experts believe the only way to achieve decarbonization is hydrogen. Typical wastewater projects include sanitary, agriculture, food, and industrial streams. In fact, we are a global sink. We are one Earth. These are not disputable statements. Pollution is pollution. Changing the mindset is required, and eliminating the problem is a necessity. We made an interesting shift to focus on domestic energy when the oil futures realized a low of a negative $37 per barrel because there was no storage space. The space in many cases was holding produced or polluted water that exceeded the EPA parts per millions allowed. We realized the need to manage the water as well as change the incredible amount of water needed to frack a well, 4 millimeter gallons annually per well, in fact. We utilize electrokinetic technology to enhance fluid dynamics and manage wastewater. We were so fortunate to partner with a Croatian firm that utilizes similar electrokinetics, but only in oil and gas underground. The amazing benefits is that it enhances fluid dynamics and eliminates the need to water flood and pressurize the well. Extracting oil produces significant amounts of water that can be utilized to create power in the form of renewable natural gas, electricity, and eliminate the need for storage. Water is a valuable asset as it holds the most common element on the Earth, hydrogen. The hydrogen-based future is the only way possible that we can close the gap to achieve the net zero emission targets and decarbonization. The emissions from hydrogen is water. R3 realized to truly make a difference, the technology must change to true global reductions. So R3 is committed to green and clean tech and the programs associated with them. R3's commitment is to also establish low-income renewable programs that can help bridge the gap, transitioning to a new net zero economy. The lower-income communities will have the most significant challenge transitioning to this technology, and it will not be cheap. And so I share that to kind of expose really what R3 Renew's thinking is. And it was in short form that when I was meeting with Greg and his team, that he immediately sent me a strategy document. And the strategy document was actually listed and named the seventh generation principles of R3 Renew. And of course, it immediately perked my ears and got me thinking about the different Native communities that I do get to interact with, and how alike and aligned while they're non-Native in their identities, they certainly are thinking about the future the way that we have to, in terms of thinking about what are the different ways that we can implement technologies in a non-invasive way, how we can implement technologies that really utilize all the byproducts that come off of these types of developments. And I wanted to share with you, community, that that R3 Renew is also getting financed by Fiscus funds as a way to show that it's in the network that we create so much strength. It's in the network of the different projects that get financed simultaneously as a way to really make introductions across these different planes. You know, I'm pretty sure that Tony would agree with me that he would not have necessarily known about this particular technology had he not had an introduction, and vice versa with Greg, that he would not have known exactly the immense effects that this kind of technology can have in Indian country without these types of cross connections through the network that we're slowly but very clearly and deliberately building. Greg is not necessarily in this room right now, so I'm a little remiss about that, but he is in our community. And so I hope that folks will feel encouraged to reach out to him and DM him. He's very, very knowledgeable, not only of the oil and gas industry, but how this technology really begins that forward motion to take us toward conversion, take us towards, yes, we want to acknowledge that there's oil and gas reserves that we can and right now should utilize to help support the infrastructural needs of the United States and our citizens. But more importantly, it really also helps in thinking about different ways that we can do it and what technologies are already being used out in the global environment that can be brought to North America to help in that future thinking towards conversion to a renewable resource. So with all of this, I just want to say to the community, thank you not only for the support and the generous thinking, the deep thinking in how this is going to work, not only for our pockets, obviously, but more importantly for the future, right? If we don't have a way to, utilize these resources that we have and to be able to make these conversions that are going to be necessary for the future, it doesn't really matter how much money that we have in our pockets because we will be suffering in other ways. And so I appreciate a lot of the comments that I've been getting, both in DM and in the community. And I just want to say, I don't particularly always speak about being a woman in the space of finance, but I would like to just take this opportunity to say, as a woman, I do think very relationally. I do think very deeply about the synergies and the energies that we all bring to the process. And as I was mentioning to one of our other project owners earlier today in a catch-up call, I tend to think that the queen on the chess table kind of takes different moves, right? And so when we take those moves on the chess table in the queen position, we move differently, we move powerfully, we move really in a way that really emphasizes the broad landscape. And that's really the perspective that I'd like to bring to how not only I engage these groups, but how I'd like the rest of the participating community in thinking about how we can make these kinds of crossovers. Because the truth is, when we braid our fabrics together, we get a stronger rope. And when we do that, we're able to go a lot further into the future of what our mission is. So again, thank you for this time. I don't want to take up too much more time. I know there's so many exciting updates that even I'm excited to hear about. So I'd love to pass it back to Phil to take us into the next segment.
Thank you so much, Princess. Thank you also to Tony Hale and Greg Jackson, and we'll definitely post his username so that those that would want to ask those questions, feel free to do so. Thank you also. I see out in the audience right now we have some other of the other projects and project owners and developers that are there. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. We have so much in store, and it feels like we've come so far, and yet we've just begun. We say that a lot, and yet when we look at the journey of what it takes to get here, when we look at the journey of the project developers to get here, when we look at the journey of the core team, this is years and decades in the making. And so we're honored to be here and honored to be able to share with the community and be able to learn. I have some notes, from Tony Hale and just the legacy there. It's truly humbling to be a part of that. And so with that, let's transition to these exciting updates. For that, I'd like to go ahead and bring in Kevin and Kyle, whoever wants to go ahead and take the lead on that, and let's hear what you guys have been up to.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil. Just wanted to say what a fantastic Fiscus Friday this has been already. So much information. It's awesome. The off-chain stuff is obviously moving. Special thanks to Princess and to Greg and Tony for sharing their thoughts. Such exciting stuff happening. We hope to keep this exciting news happening on our update and what we've been up to. First and foremost, I want to say I'm stoked to be back here. I've had a couple weeks off, and Kyle, my boss, my mentor, has really stepped in nicely. So shout out to him. Thanks, Kyle. He's a great guy to have on this project. In terms of our operations side, we've actually signed our letter of engagement now with our compliance legal team. So what they're doing is they've officially begun starting to build out our full compliance paperwork. And inside this paperwork, it's going to deal with governance and tokenomics. It's going to really cover everything. And we're happy to be working on that and to eventually share that with the community as well. We're super stoked on there. And then even better news, we have made contact. I have a contact at Surtech who's going to be auditing our smart contracts. So I know this is a big announcement in our community. People who are familiar with on-chain know the name Surtech. They know it's a big name in auditing, and we're going to have that Surtech check beside our smart contract. So we're super stoked for that. In terms of our marketing, I know we've heard lots of feedback from the community about marketing and seeing more marketing. The reality is we've been reaching out to multiple Twitter influencers, people with millions of followers, and there's been great response to work with Fiscus. Not only just working with it in terms of marketing, but actually believing in the project. So when you get these minds of people who have built up hundreds of thousands and millions of followers on Twitter and other platforms, and they're getting stoked about Fiscus, I think that tells you something right there. So we're really pushing hard on the marketing side to get a full-fledged campaign with multiple influencers pushing Fiscus on Twitter. So get ready for that. Start watching your Twitter, and we'll let the hype build from there. Also on the marketing side, we're just finishing up our website. I want to give a special shout out to ALOD and RPWS for really stepping up. A couple admins here, you guys know them in the community. They're great members to have, and they've really helped us out with this new website. It's amazing. I'm sure they're going to be stoked to share it with you guys. And then on the last side, we have Deb. You heard Phil talk about the LBP launch. I'm sure he's going to said he's going to announce a date later on, so he'll touch into that a little bit further. But what I can tell you is development is underway on the contract side, and we're working parallel with the contract team, with the UI teams to avoid any mix-ups. I know obviously what happened with the whitelist. We're working hard to avoid any of those mix-ups. So we're working parallel with both teams now and opening up new communication channels to ensure that the development stays on time. That's all I've got for you. Thanks, everyone. Again, I'm really excited to be back here on Fiscus Friday, and we'll pass it off to Phil.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We're thrilled to have you back as well. The blend of who we are as Fiscus, off-chain and on-chain is truly extraordinary. You know, those that may be here in Fiscus Friday for the first time, you know, some of the things that we will talk about, some of the elements that we'll touch on may seem foreign, may seem absolutely Greek to you, unless you speak Greek. But, you know, again, you know, we come to this from the standpoint of how do we blend the two? How do we do something that truly has not been done? And that's what we're here to do. And that's what we're doing. That is what we are actively doing. That is what you're hearing. This is what it sounds like. So again, thank you so much for those updates. And then also, I do want to check in here with Kyle, because I know that he had a few updates that may be ready now, or maybe something that he's going to speak on at a later time.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. Definitely can't match Kevin's energy there. He's amazing. From our side, you know, I want to expound on a couple things he said, and I'll went into speaking a bit about how we're bringing in some influencers and a little bit about some of our marketing efforts. What I wanted to expand on is some of these influencers, you know, we had certain qualification metrics they've got to have, you know, at least, you know, about 500,000 or so followers. We're pleased to see that the influencers that are engaging are above 1 million or so. And, you know, when they vet the project, like they're not simply going to put their name on any project. You know, they're putting their stamp on this. If they're advocating on the project behalf, they've got to, you know, they've really got to buy into the project, and, you know, and having the meetings with them and speaking to the project, speaking to what we're about, you know, what sort of the future has for Fiscus and how we're sort of trying to change not just the community's lives, but also really see some of these projects have impact, because they're all purpose built, right? They're not simply fluff projects. You've heard Princess and some of the great projects she's brought to the table. You've met some Brad and Brooke the other day. I mean, they're hardworking people. You heard about their story. You know, just it's just really interesting, this ecosystem that we're creating and what we're doing to kind of support it. And so having these influencers be brought in sort of or what our intention is about a week before LBP, and then as we launch, really have them support us through that launch, and bring some more members into our community. I know over the last couple of weeks, the last few AMAs, we've really encouraged our existing community, you guys, to sort of get the word out. Let's build this community, and that's how you do it, is by speaking about it and advocating for it, and anything worthwhile is really worthwhile talking about. And so we appreciate you guys doing that. We are working on our dev teams. They are working on some of the UIs here, and everything. Everybody's working sort of around the clock, and we're looking to meet some aggressive milestones, but it's all attainable. I'm hesitant to announce any dates because I don't want to steal any thunder away here from Phil, and I'll let him do that. But no, we're just all around really excited about the project. We have, we are going to open up some channels around Project Flow. Kevin has an analyst that works under him. His name's Patrick. Patrick is putting together some guides on how, if you have projects or you want to build a project, what does that look like and how do you submit it? And so those are all features and functionality that will open up in weeks after LBP. Those aren't anything that are in the immediate future, but they are, let's call it Q2 items. And in a nutshell, that's my core updates. Phil, is there anything else you want me to speak to?
No, sir. No, I think that definitely covers it.
Okay. Well, then I'll pass it back to you. For anybody that's concerned, my voice is coming back slowly, so thanks for the DMs. I appreciate the concerns. And back to Phil. Have a good day, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And even to highlight some of those elements that Kyle spoke about, one of the questions in the AMA questions, and all those will be available here in print shortly, have all of the answers from the team already provided. So we'll paste those over, and everybody can really dive into those and provide follow-up questions, and we'll continue to engage there. But one of the questions that I'd like to highlight is one that I think is what happens if someone of the core team gets hit by a bus question, right? And the amazing thing about operations and compliance and everything that is being built with Kevin and Kyle, it's not just CYA, right? If I can speak, most frankly, it's not CYA. It's not just covering our backside. It is, how do we really, from a structural standpoint, how do we maintain and grow without it being centered on one or two or three or four or even five individuals? And that is I think the most beautiful thing about Fiscus is that we are doing this from the beginning. We're not waiting and having this, this centralized, cabal that moves forward, into the future. It is about decentralization now. It is about that level of planning right now. And so just thrilled that is there. And with that being the case, it allows, it's allowing Princess in her vast network and skill set to be able to run. It allows the Fiscus funds with the new fund managers to be able to run. And that's the point, right? When we look at scale and sustainability, I think several questions this week center around that, how do we sustain this level? How do we sustain, not only our growth, but our traction, our abilities? We do that by growing operationally. We do that by allowing everything to, again, not be based on just a few, but to be based upon the community. We had the Fiscus Plus announcement late last night. Obviously, I think community still digesting that. Core elements in there are Fiscalite introductions. Really our ability to mobilize communities, our ability to mobilize ideas and strategies, not only just for the alpha that creates, but for, again, that operational security that creates by being more than just a few. And so just wanting to highlight that and appreciate those elements. We have such a dynamic team. big announcement everybody's been waiting on. LBP, for those new in the community that have no idea what that means. There's guides. Feel free to DM the admins. Feel free to DM me. We'll wax poetic about it. Liquidity bootstrapping pool is kind of common term. It's kind of our first foray into the public crypto market, if you will. We'll be utilizing Copper Launch, as we've said before. The WP Fisc token has already been created and is sitting. The dates, most importantly, the dates for the LBP, March 16th through the 19th. So that is literally 5 days away. So starting on Wednesday, ending on Saturday. Thrilled for that. There's some additional details. Those that understand how liquidity pool works, it's about where are we starting at, not only with tokens, what capital we're matching to that, which is all the capital, obviously from the whitelist. What are the initial ratios? 2 or 3 of those elements we're still ironing out. Some would say, why are we ironing those out still if we already have the date? The reason, those that are on that granular level know that we have not only a few projects, but additionally we have some other demand classes that will be participating in that LBP. And so we want and always want to have a structured, phenomenally influenced, in a fair way solution. And so based on that, we'll announce some of those further details as we get closer here to the 16th. But thrilled for that. The questions, like I mentioned, those other AMA questions will be posted. Feel free to post additional, and we will absolutely answer those and get in on those. We are thrilled for everyone being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending this hour with us continually. Thank you for your support, commitment, and passion for Fiscus. The projects that we will fund and are funding and have already approved, the new projects, the flow of projects is not ceasing. Again, as Princess noted, there's new projects. As Kyle noted, there's new projects. We have entire groups of project aggregators and facilitators that want access to Fiscus as well. And we know that the first things comes first, and that is fulfilling our financing to the projects that we have already signed. And we are thrilled for that. We're thrilled to see them flourish and for the community to flourish as well. And so with that being said, I'd like to pass it off here to, I don't see Kevin. I think we might have lost him there for a second. I'd like to pass it off to Kyle for the goodbyes for the day.
All right. Well, thank you all. Just on Phil's note there on, if one of us gets hit by a bus, look, there's opportunity for you guys to come out with some sort of cloning machines or something like that and present that as a project. We'd be happy to fund that. But no, the one of our core focuses here is on creating SOPs, creating just that rigid structure that, again, DAO should really be about. It's community based. It should be decentralized. It should be a functional organization. And those are areas where some of our analysts put core focus to, and building the business behind, what you see as a community. So know that we're working on these things. Know that, I know there's people eager to hear dates and timelines, and, you've just heard a big one. So let's get excited about it. And I'll look forward to talking to you guys next Friday. Have a good weekend and see you later.